Is this thing on? Welcome back to Big Mouth and fancy seeing you here in Jew. A very welcome, my friends, and especially my enemies. Come in, sit down, no touching. I don't do the touching. Are you feeling charitable? Then smash the subscribe button and the like button, and please do follow me on Twitter at Movies TV Man. And welcome to Tuesday's edition of the dceu Daily. But really, we should whittle this down just for today as the DC Daily, because some very troubling news reached us last night exclusively from Boris Kitt from The Hollywood Reporter, saying that Warner Media and AT&T are trimming the fat over at DC Comics and they're making a lot of redundancies. It seems like everyone who was working for the DC Universe streaming service has been removed. Now, listen, DC Universe was an experiment that simply hasn't worked. But let me be clear about this. It was a good experiment. It was worth the gamble, and it's costing more money than it's bringing in. So you can understand why they're moving all the product from DC Universe over to HBO Max and the CW. That makes good business sense. Now, this isn't a good thing for people losing their jobs, but I see this as an improvement. Now, there's two articles I want to read about this. There's one, which is really the bad news about people losing their jobs. And then Variety did a really good article about how this is a good thing and Jim Lee is moving forward with branching out the whole of the DC IP. DC Comics, DC Universe hit by major layoffs. The majority of staff of the streaming service DC Universe has been laid off, as has Editor-in-Chief Bob Harras and multiple other executives on the publishing side. Monday's Warner Media layoffs have affected a significant number of high-level figures at comic book powerhouse DC. Multiple sources tell The Hollywood Reporter. Now, what I think is interesting about this, because these are high-level employees, which means they were making a lot of money, which means they're not going to go hungry. I'm hearing a lot of people, throwing out sympathy, but let's not forget, these are people who won't go hungry. Among those said to be losing their positions are Editor-in-Chief Bob Harras, Senior Vice President of Publishing Strategy. Now, what is a Vice President of Publishing Strategy? Well, do you actually need a Vice President of Publishing Strategy? I'm assuming they've actually got a President of Publishing Strategy. So again, Warner Media and AT&T are right here to let this position go. It's a waste of money. And Support Services Hank Canales, Vice President of Marketing and Creative Services, Jonah Whalen, Vice President Global Publishing Initiatives. I mean, what's Global Publishing Initiatives? I get that there's, this is about publishing globally, but what initiatives? You publish the comics that are ready to go. What initiative do you need? And Digital Strategy, Bobby Chase, Senior Story Editor, Brian Cunningham, and Executive Editor, Mark Doyle, who oversaw the rollout of the Black Label graphic novels. Jim Lee remains in the CCO. Roughly one-third of DC's editorial ranks are being laid off, according to sources. Insiders also say the majority of the staff of the streaming service DC Universe has been laid off, a move that had been widely expected as Warner Media shifts its focus to new streaming service HBO Max. DC Universe was dead on arrival as soon as the AT&T merger happened, said one source. Listen, as I've already said, it was an experiment that was always going to fail, but as I say, it was a really great idea. DC Universe launched in May 2018 and is home to live-action series such as Doom Patrol, Titans and Stargirl, as well as animated offerings including Young Justice and Harley Quinn. Some of those shows have now started to stream on HBO Max. Also, victim of the layoffs, DC Direct, the company's in-house merchandise and collectible manufacturer. The division has been shuttered after 22 years, another move that was rumoured when Warner Bros. Consumer products began taking a more active role in DC merchandising. A DC spokesman declined to comment on the changes, which come less than 2 weeks before the planned August the 27th online event DC Fandom, which is set to showcase stars from DC's film, TV and comic book worlds. So what do I make of this? Well, I've pretty much already told you, but I'll reiterate what I think. What you're seeing here is confirmation that the comic book industry isn't one of the big incomes in the world. It's not. You know, in 1938, when they first launched Action Comics 1, it was groundbreaking. It lit the blue touch paper, and maybe for 10, 20 years, it was one of the great entertainment sources, and they were making a hell of a lot of money. But I think in the last 20 to 30 years, it's been confirmed that people are simply not buying comic books. They're either looking at them digitally, or they're more embracing live action TV, comic book adaptations, movies, and animation. The people who are buying them now are the people who bought them as kids, right? Now, DC comic books are not going anywhere. It's just that AT&T and Warner Media want to run this as a business. And, you know, the previous company, Time Warner, weren't doing it. They were running it as a charity. You know, comic books have always been around. Let's let all these people keep their jobs. But it was never, you know, business sufficient. And I think what Warner Media and AT&T are saying, you know what? Let's trim the fat and let's get a profit from DC Comics, because after all, AT&T bought Time Warner for a reason, to make money. You've seen what they're doing with DC Fandom, and the announcements you're going to get there will show you that these people are serious about the comics, about the movies, and the TV shows. These people have a vision. This is nothing to worry about. DC Comics are absolutely going nowhere. I know the article tries to be, you know, oh, this is massive. Of course, it's sad to hear people losing their jobs. But as I said, most of these people were on big salaries. They'll get other jobs in other businesses. Of course, as I say, of course it's sad, but it's a necessity. So how does this affect you and me, the consumer of comic books, comic book adaptations on television and on the big screen? It doesn't affect us. We're still going to get epic comics. We're still going to get epic comic book adapted TV shows and movies. It simply doesn't affect us. All this does is solidify the future of DC. So no one should be concerned about this. You can have empathy for the people who have lost their jobs. But apart from this, this is a big move, the right move. And what you're going to see very quickly is other comic book companies like Marvel doing the same thing. They were just waiting for DC to do it. These are big, brave, bold decisions that had to be made. They had to be made because of COVID-19, because they're losing money even without COVID-19. You know, with these decisions and the way they're looking at comic books, and I know when AT&T first bought Time Warner, people were saying they don't care about comics, they're going to shut down the division. They're not going to shut down the division. They wouldn't do that. There's a profit to be made from comic books, but you can't run it like a studio. You know, a comic book adapted movie can make up to $1 billion globally. No comic book's going to make that kind of money. And this is the way Time Warner were running the comic book division. You know, so there was it was all emotion. There was no business acumen. They were just losing money. So now Warner Media, in the next few years with the decisions they're making, will actually start to make a profit, and the product that you get will be better for it. I actually looked at this Variety article. It's very similar to the article I've just read for you, but I'll read you the tweet that Variety put out because I think it's very interesting. A source says that through Warner Media's streamlining efforts, the DC brand will actually be expanding, with DC Chief Creative Officer Jim Lee overseeing creative of all DC-related growth in the company. And I think that's important. And as I've just reiterated, and I'll reiterate it again, the whole point of these very important decisions is to make DC a better IP, a better product. And I think once you see what's on offer at DC Fandom and all the news and reveals we're going to get, you're going to realize that this is good for every DC fan And I'll finish this video off like I did yesterday, talking about my fellow Snyderverse DCEU fans. These people are now starting to bother Zack Snyder on Vero to prove their points, to prove that other people are mistaken in these aggressive debates that they had. One person actually asked Zack, who's doing the special effects for Justice League, just to prove somebody else wrong. We are seeing a lot of children trying to one-up each other. Personally, and I don't know about you, I couldn't give a toss who's doing the special effects for Zack Snyder's Justice League. But as I said yesterday, it's this whole debate now that they want it to be ZSJL or whatever they're talking about, right? I'll say what I said yesterday and we'll finish off for today. It's Zack Snyder's Justice League. It's going to remain Zack Snyder's Justice League. You're not going to win. You're not going to win. You can't run the hen house, and you never will. Comment down below. Like, share, and subscribe, and I'll be back tomorrow with even more DCEU Daily. See you again soon.